Welcome back, everyone, to the Day with Trae. I'm your host, Trae Holiday. Excited to have Evan Cook in the building. What's up, Evan?
What's up?
How are you?
I'm doing really good. Super excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you are here. We've been really trying to focus more on some folks in South King County, and you have been such a name that I hear all the time. I've seen you in community for years. We got connected way back when. So it's so great to have you here and to talk a bit about some of the impact that you've been able to make right out there in South King County. Tell us just in general about some of the things that you've been able to do out there, Federal Way and beyond.
Yes, I've done a lot. I would say, I started out public speaking in Federal Way whenever I left college and law enforcement and I moved back to this side of the state. And I started off doing that and I recognized like there's a huge need for mentors. And I wasn't really familiar with like the different mentors on the scene. And so I just kind of shifted my public speaking platform to being a mentor. And that kind of led me in the nonprofit work and working with different nonprofits in Federal Way and throughout South King County. And that led me to even starting one or being one of the co-founders of the Federal Way Black Collective and just my own company, Restoring Minds, and coaching football. Like there's just so much that I do. So.
Well, it starts to kind of all converge, so to speak, right?
Yeah.
Where, I've heard about you as a mentor and like young Black kids, boys, even in particular, being able to be like, okay, Evan's doing something major with his life. Like I too can do that. Just that connection is always so key. Tell us about some of those key areas for you in terms of the ways that you've been able to impact the youth specifically.
I think the main way is just being an example. I think that that's what made me want to shift in the first place was they needed somebody that they can look at and see that he's doing this thing. And what led me kind of to entrepreneurship was, school districts and different type of organizations or institutions. They didn't necessarily want to elevate me to leadership roles or to different things that where I could be a bigger example. And so I kind of just had to go and create that lane on my own and show them that you can do it despite differences, despite adversity, despite anything. And that's kind of the main thing I wanted to show those kids is there is somebody they can look up to that is human, that makes mistakes, that isn't perfect, but still can relate to you, still can go be on a stage and in different rooms and talk to different people, and then still come be able to talk to them in a manner in which they understand.
Yeah. Well, this is really special. And I think one of the things that stands out to me is, after the protest movement, there was this defund the police, this whole campaign, and communities were trying to figure out how to engage in community safety. And when I heard about some of the things that y'all were doing out there in terms of like going to these schools, breaking up fights, like being present, there was something so inspiring about that for me. And so, I just had to ask you about that because that's something that I think a lot of communities are still trying to understand. How do we go about community safety? How do we engage with, the younger generation when they may look at us and be like, man, you don't know me, you don't know what I've been through or whatever. And to really build that connection in that specific way when it comes to community safety.
Well, I've always felt like it's not the what, it's the who. And it's who we have coming into these kids and speaking life into them. And I think if people do it the traditional way where I'm talking at you and I'm trying to, discipline you without building a rapport, like you're gonna get rebellion. And so I think like one thing that's been successful for me is like I've always been able to get with them at their level and bring them up to mine, not necessarily stoop to theirs, but bring them up to mine and say like we can have an understanding, we can have a conversation if you're a young adult or an adult, we can have a conversation that's civil and we can tone it down and bring the energy down and we can be respectable to one another. And I think that approach has really helped me align with different youth throughout just life in general because they see me as what they would call real.
Yeah, it's so important. And I have an 18-year-old and he's been in the community and, in Federal Way, growing up there. And it's always, I think, it matters so much to me when someone can come up to me and say, man, I saw your boy, like he was super respectful, he did this or that, or hey, yo, I got to, connect with him and man, what a young man. There's something so great about pouring in to these kids, and then being able to see those examples in community. So thank you for doing that body of work. It's so important. But also, you know, you're not only a community advocate and founder of a nonprofit, you are also an author. And so I want to talk a bit about your book and, you know, what made you say, I need to write this story now. I need to get this on paper. Tell us more.
Well, what made me want to write this particular book, How My Soul Speaks, let me just hold it up real fast, was, you know, helping youth actually and going through some of the adversity that I faced. There was a year, I mean, this book is about kind of how I found self-care for myself. That was like a buzzword that I've heard and something I really wasn't familiar with or really good at because I only knew a few ways to kind of deal with the pain and things that you know, the secondary trauma that you encounter dealing with youth. And so I had lost countless numbers of youth, and it's, you know, I don't know, it's kind of hard to reflect on. I even lost a coworker, Andre Ballard, rest in peace. And I just didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to deal. And so my workplace at the time, they said, take a break. Like, you need to just get away. And so I was like, okay, but I'd already had this leadership conference scheduled. And so I went to this leadership conference and I picked up a notebook on my way in and it said, quiet the mind and the soul will speak. And I just felt like I needed that message right there. And so in that meeting, I just was writing poetry. And that's kind of was all I was doing, just listening and writing and listening and writing. And that 2-day leadership conference turned into me writing in this journal for the next 2 years, 3 years. And then it was just sitting there and I hadn't added to it. So I was like, I think it's time to do something with it now. And so last year I was like, I think I want to publish it. And I had published a book before, and this time I wanted to self-publish. I wanted to see if I could get the project out on my own. And so it's actually been a very, I don't know, liberating experience, but at the same time traumatic too, because it's like reliving some of those moments and things that kind of, I don't know, cause the scars to open up. And, but it's really positive, you know, it's really healthy because I'm able to express myself and get that off my chest.
Well, when you think about putting something down on paper, it starts with you, but when you publish it, now it extends to everyone. Tell us about what you want folks to get when they read this book right here, How My Soul Speaks. Tell them, like, what is it that they should be getting from this book?
Well, you get a deep dive into my personal headspace, I would say. But it's more so I want them to get inspiration to find their journey of self-care. This is kind of how I think. I've always said to people, if you want to know me, just read my poetry. And so there's a lot of poetry in here that's like, you know, I would say controversial in some ears and but positive in others. And I just wanted them to get the real me, to get an idea of who I am. As poetry is like the best way I know how to express myself. And so I wanted to be able to do that through this book. And so in this, they get a deep dive into me and then some of the things that I've been through just doing what we call the work, you know, and working with kids and working with organizations and things like that. It's going to be challenging. But the inspiration comes to like being able to find a way through darkness. This was about my dark time. So a lot of the poems here are dark. They're very deep. They're very heartfelt. They're going to pull at your strings. And might even cause you to cry a little bit. I cry when I read some of these poems still, and I wrote them like years ago. But you know, I want them to get an understanding of who I am as a person. Everything hasn't always been great, and but on the other side of that darkness is a light, and I want people to see that there's a way to get to it.
Yeah, you know, these personal kinds of tellings of our lives, this recounting of our own experiences is so key because people find their own liberation through yours. So I'm so appreciative that you decided to make this public for folks, that you decided to publish this so that we can all find our way, you know, through what you experienced, because there's so much likeness in what we deal with, you know, in society. But sometimes people need that anchor to kind of get them out of it, or to also show to them they're not the only ones dealing with it. Now, this is something where all of these experiences kind of combine in you being a founder of Federal Way Black Collective. This has been a group that I knew about years ago, just trying to get advocacy, community organizing, really in Federal Way, because I live there, but I do my advocacy work in Seattle because I'm from Seattle, and I didn't actually feel the community vibe until I started tapping in with folks like yourself in Federal Way Black Collective. Tell us more about what y'all do.
Well, we started off just as community leaders, going to city hall meetings and really hearing some of the things that the city council and that the mayor were trying to do. And so in our own rights, we started kind of advocating for things, and we just kind of saw each other in the room like, hey, right? You know, and so we got together and we sat down and we wanted to bring information to the Black community in Federal Way. We wanted to bring what they're talking about at the school board level, what they're talking about at the city council level, what they're talking about at the state level, how policies and how different regulations and things that are coming down the pike affect us as a community, and how that we can have a voice in that. And so we came together and we started a show called Thursday Thoughts. And we ran that show, I mean, for about 2 years straight up until COVID kind of sidelined us, and then we kind of took it virtual. But we ran that show, and it was all about just educating our community. Coordinated efforts affect policy change. That was like our mission. That was kind of like our goal. And then from there, we got community voice, right? We hosted community meetings, we got community voice, and they told us what they needed in community. And so from there, we ended up starting a 501c3, a nonprofit, and being able to start programming in community through working with childcare, working with rental assistance, working with just different types of things that the community was struggling with, and trying to provide a service. And so we've kind of shifted away from making and kicking up dust at the city hall meetings to now being able to work with families and youth and help them kind of deal with some of the more personal things that they're going through.
Yeah, this is important too, because you have to think about the folks that if you don't center what they need, if they're not a part of the design of your existence, then you also you can end up with a detached kind of nonprofit that's like, sounds great, but nobody's really tapping into that, or nobody needs it. I, for one, still think there's always room for folks to understand what's going on, because especially in Federal Way, where it feels like there's not enough information or insight that's happening when it comes to city council specifically for Federal Way, to really engage folks. And so I love that y'all started there, but we're able to shift. I got to give you time, because you've told us about a lot. If folks are trying to tap in, if they want to buy the book, if they're like, whoa, I didn't know about Federal Way Black Collective, but I'm out there, I want to tap in with that. Look right here and let them know how they connect with you, Evan.
Well, with the Federal Black Collective, go to our website, fwblackcollective.org. You can connect with us there. There's a sheet you can fill out on the website or whatever, and kind of shifts your needs. I sit on the board, so I don't do like the direct work day to day, but that is that. For my book, How My Soul Speaks, you can go to my personal website, evancook.com. Just make the E a 3, so it's 3vancook.com, and you'll go there, and the first thing that'll pop up is the book. And it's also available in form of an audiobook. And so it's about $20, the audiobook's $5, and I promise you it's well worth it. It's really well worth it. And while we're at it, I wanted to give this to you, just for having me in space and having me on. I followed you, like I said, we met years ago, and I've seen Converge Media, I've seen a lot of these shows, and I just kind of love the platform that you provide people. I love the platform that you're providing me today. I think this is really positive and healthy for our community, and I just love to be a part of it, and I love you for doing it. So thank you, and this is for you. When you read it, try not to cry.
All right, now you done already gave me the preface, Evan, so I can't promise anything, but I appreciate you so much, and this is why this was such a special episode for me, because as I said in the beginning, we have known each other for some years now, and every time when your name is brought up, it's nothing but positivity. And I'm sure you probably experience the same from me, that just we're out here, we care, we love, we lead with our heart. You know, we care for the people that we're here to serve, which is our community. So Evan, thank you for giving me this, and thank you so much for coming on today.
No problem.
Absolutely. Y'all, I told you it's a magnificent Monday, and you know I try not to disappoint y'all when I set you up. I'm going to wrap all this magnificence up right after this short break. Stay tuned. You're watching The Day with Trae.